Yeah, Delaine, you've talked about how we've built more prisons than schools, and just kind of elaborate on that, on why you think education is better for our economy, in the fact that it's growing our tax base.
Well, we know it is. I mean, we have the finest public and private research institutions in the world located in California, Stanford and Cal and UCLA and USC and our great state universities, our great community colleges. It's an amazing amount of education done here. And we have also research institutions like SRI, and we've got great research institutions like Caltech. What do we know? We know that the best way to prevent incarceration is to educate people. The better your educational system is, the lower your crime rate is. Look at Europe. Go to, Norway or Sweden. Go to Denmark and France and Germany. What you see are people that are invested in preschool, they're invested in elementary and secondary education, and they're invested in higher ed, as we were. These people came out of a depression and a war, and they understood the importance of that. Think about it. I left to go to UC Davis. 9 out of 10 campuses of the University of California were built and opened by the mid-'60s. Since 1985, we built one UC, we built 3 CSUs out of 23, one UC out of 10, 3 CSUs out of 23, and 9 of the 114 campus community college system. A total of 13 college campuses since 1985. In that same period of time, we built 23 prisons. So prisons are an expense. Higher education is an investment. And in private sector, everybody knows you need to hold your expenses down and increase your investments. And I'm saying if we were doing a better job educating our kids, we would not have such a high prison price tag, and we would have a more productive society.
Delaine, you have gotten a lot of honors, bipartisan honors. Your first year in Assembly, you were honored with a bipartisan award. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm very privileged to have been acknowledged by a number of different entities for my work in the legislature. And the California School Boards Association has been very generous to me. So has the American Institute of Architects and a host of other entities, the Association of California School Administrators, the Association of Area Governments, a lot of Metropolitan Transportation Commission, a lot of different entities gave me shout-outs. So the American Library Association gave me a national award for my work to improve school libraries.
And the big one is, you were the first woman to be elected to the superintendent of public education, and the only woman still, I believe, right? Yeah. You're such a champion of education, and we'd like to know just kind of the road of how you got there and why you became so determined to have that as your life's work, and because you've done so much for it, and what are some of the life experience you've had that relates to the importance of education and how it defined your role and leadership?
Well, I mean, it's a wonderful story. My dad was in the Navy, and he fell in love with a San Franciscan. He was from Kentucky. And so I was born into a Navy family. Well, when my parents got out of the Navy, they could have bought a bigger house for less money, but they bought the little house that cost more because the schools were better. And so I classroom of 44 children to a classroom of 20 children in the second grade. And it was night and day. And so as superintendent of schools, I fought to reduce class size in kindergarten through third grade. But it wasn't just that my parents picked a good school district. My dad always said, he was quoting his mother, the most important thing you could have in this world is to have an education. He was accepted at college, but it was the Great Depression, and the house burned down, and his father went bankrupt, so he joined the Navy. But he always dreamed that I would go to college. And he and my mother sacrificed greatly to put me into UC Davis. At that time, girls could not borrow money until they were 21. Boys could borrow at 18. So my parents had to borrow the money at a much higher rate of interest over a shorter period of time. By the time I was 21, and the law changed at that time. They put women in the Civil Rights Act. So we were able to borrow money at 18 by the time I turned 21. But by that time, they were paying twice their house payment on my loans. And I did get to go to Davis, and then I got to go to graduate school at Santa Barbara, UC Santa Barbara. And by that time, I was working 3 jobs and borrowing money, but I just felt so blessed to have this great education. I went off to teach political science, and I was a freeway flyer at community colleges. I was driving 1,000 miles a week to be a part-time teacher at a couple of campuses. And finally, I I kept trying to do things so I'd get a full-time job, and I developed courses and an internship program, and I did workshops, and I wrote grants that got funded, and ran the Women's Center and the Women's Studies Coordinator in one campus. And finally, I was up for a full-time job. I'd been selected. I went before the board the night after Prop 13 passed, and I was not selected because they froze all new hires. So I waited another year, and then I went to the private sector so that I could run for city council, because by that time I'd been a planning commissioner. I was going to write the definitive textbook on California state and local government. So I'd been on the planning commission, and I decided I would get involved in local government. And I had a magnificent experience in Union City. We later won the Excellence Award from the League of California Cities. We had a fabulous city manager, a fine council, and we didn't always agree on everything, but we worked well together, and we got a lot done. And so I'm proud to say that I was instrumental in getting the city and the school district to cooperate together. And today there's a school named after me in Union City, Delaine Eastin Elementary. I then, after a couple of terms of in the city council, I ran for the assembly. My passion was to help improve education because it was already going downhill. And at first, Willie Brown wouldn't put me on the education committee, so I did a lot with environmental legislation and housing legislation and long-term planning and transportation. And then eventually, Willie Brown let me be on the education committee, and I wound up chairing the committee, and I ran for superintendent. It is amazing that I'm the only woman to be superintendent, because education is a profession dominated by women, but I was proud that I was able to turn the department around. It had been somewhat, depressed, that my predecessor had resigned, and there'd been a lot of people were demoralized. There wasn't a lot of energy, and so we really set about creating a team of people that were on a mission, and it's a marvelous group of people. They care about children, and we had a good time together.
One of the things I saw you do in assembly was pick up a one-page application for charter schools and show it to the people and say, this is it? One page for a charter school to apply with very little information is all I need to apply. No further questions. And I thought that was really great to highlight the lack of information needed to start a school. And I think Mike's got to follow up with that too.
Yeah, well, I think, as Aaron was alluding to, I think that we all would agree that actually public schools are the backbone of the education system. So with that in mind, I mean, I know my thought on this, and I'm curious as to your thought, Delaine. I mean, I believe that Betsy DeVos, who is the U.S. Secretary of Education, of course, has got a lot of backwards and harmful viewpoints on public education and public school systems. So what's your viewpoint on that?
Well, first, charter schools are supposed to be public schools, and they should have to play by the same rules that regular schools are playing by. That includes accounting oversight, auditing. It includes, making sure that the kids are there legally and appropriately. So I'll give you an example. In Livermore, they were charging Chinese children from China families, $30,000 a year to attend a Livermore charter school. They were guaranteeing all those kids that they would get into UC Berkeley. This is illegal. But because there wasn't enough oversight when they were part of the state board had granted the charter, but the county, the local superintendent was a very smart woman, and she told her board, if we're going to have this charter in our midst, we ought to have control over it. So we ought to take and issue the charter. And that's what happened, and that's how they found them out. That's what's illegal. But there are some charters that are they're either not accepting all the students, saying you shouldn't put your special needs here. We don't have this charter. That's illegal. And it may be okay to Betsy DeVos, but it's not okay under California state law or federal law. And so you got to make sure they're required to take all the kids. They can't just cherry pick the best and brightest and announce that they are going to, not play by the rules, or not even announce it, just not play by the rules. There are some charters that were kicking the kids back to regular schools a week before the testing because they were afraid they'd pull their results down. None of this was ever the goal, really, of charters. And so I call for a moratorium until we can make sure they're playing by the rules. Having said that, we do need great public schools in California. And, I do think that we have some opportunities to have working charters, but they can't be allowed to to either steal money from the state or from the local district or to not accept all children.